So there is a lot of people that are freaking out at the seemingly abandoned state of Thunder Tier 1, a top-down tactical shooter being developed by a small team within the studio of Krafton known for PUBG. The game released on December 7th, 2021, with promises of mod tools that were pulled from the game days before launch and delayed until months later when the game was already dead. With a few hotfixes and patches that brought in a few new weapons and operator voice lines, I think at this point it's safe to say that the community is frustrated at the post-launch support or lack thereof from the devs at Krafton. The last patch was on August 11th, 2022, 6 months after launch, in which the developers stated this: Thunder Tier 1 was always planned to be a small, standalone title, and we're happy with where the game is right now in terms of its development. As such, this will be the last content update for Thunder Tier 1. No new maps, no new missions, no new modes, just a couple of weapons and some voice lines. Fast forward to 2 days ago, on October 17th, 2023, the dedicated multiplayer servers are being turned offline starting on November 14th, meaning if you buy the game after that date, you will only be able to jump into single player or self-hosted games. With the discussion around the developers' handling of post-launch support, the mostly negative reviews, and a game that feels feature complete but not content complete, I have quite a few things I want to get off my chest in regards to indie development, post-launch support, and sustainability in the gaming space. My name is Big Fry. Let's get into it. So a lot of people are pissed about Thunder Tier 1, accusations of scamming their audience, abandoning the game, and pushing out shovelware. It hasn't been an easy road for the community, and honestly, thinking back to the launch of Thunder Tier 1, I had a lot of hope for the game. It felt like we finally had a game that could facilitate that co-op tactical experience in a more closed-off, highly detailed, smaller environment that games like Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon used to provide for us. The idea of having modding tools at launch to create anything you want was exciting. Unfortunately, the developers ran into issues with the mod tools right before launch, and things had to be delayed. This is where we first started seeing accusations flying of lying about the mod tools and actively trying to hurt the community and pushing out a game that wasn't ready. Mod tools were inevitably released 2 months later in February, but by that time, the game had no community left. The missions you could run were ran through multiple times already, and there wasn't a lot of content to begin with, hence the excitement for mod tools. I can understand people's frustrations with this, but I also compare it to what we're trying to do with transients. We want to make a single-player, linear, narrative-driven story that you can complete in a good amount of time and release it for $10 to $15. And we have been completely transparent about that since our first announcement. But even so, I've had so many questions about post-launch support, DLCs, additional missions, and content that will come to the game after launch. It starts to feel like people automatically are expecting live service development. It's like we've been conditioned to expect post-launch DLC, expansions, and content. And in the case of Thunder Tier 1, I don't actually think that was the developers' intentions. I mean, clearly it wasn't, because 6 months after, they said, hey, we're happy with where it is, take it or leave it. They wanted to release a small, standalone project with mod tools that lets the community create the experiences they want to see. They give you the base, you create the rest. Looking at past reviews from like the launch days of the game, it's clear that the biggest problem with the game was the AI. Basically, the game was unplayable if you were playing solo because your AI teammates were dumb as fuck. And I think what people were wanting was, on top of the content and on top of the post-launch support, they wanted that shit fixed. Playing the game on realism, which is what I imagine a vast majority of this kind of community is gonna want to play it on, was basically impossible. AI were so inconsistent, your team would sometimes not engage people at close range, they'd be looking at them, they wouldn't do anything, and then they would die. It was kind of fucked. So on top of not having a lot of content in the game to begin with, the AI just kind of ruined the experience if you were a solo player, meaning you were forced to play with friends, meaning all of your friends needed to buy the game. And again, not to talk about transients any more than we already have, I also understand that AI is some of the hardest shit to do and why single player games are a lot tougher than a lot of people think. Granted, I feel like if I'm getting into Thunder Tier 1, I'm wanting to get into it for the co-op aspect. I personally, as a player, don't play games like Ghost Recon Wildlands or Breakpoint. I don't like playing those games solo because it's about the co-op tactical nature for me. So this idea of the developers abandoning the game is two-pronged. There wasn't a lot of content to begin with. People were expecting post-launch content, but they were also expecting you to fix the issues that they had with the title, and which is why a lot of these people couldn't recommend the game. The game was mixed at launch, and now it's mostly negative because from that community perspective, the game has been abandoned. Now, the anger is very reminiscent of Operation Harsh Doorstop, which was released into early access earlier this year and has been lambasted by the tactical community as lazy and providing a bare bones experience and expecting the community to make the game for them, much like what we're hearing with Thunder Tier 1. Now, I can see both sides of the coin here. The vast amount of players aren't modders. The vast amount of players have never downloaded Unreal Engine, let alone opened it. They just want a good game with a lot of content for a good price tag. And I don't think people feel they got that with Thunder Tier 1, and I'll be honest, I think for $20, the game's actually kind of dope. And I also think because it's kind of dope, and because it felt so good, they just wanted more. And I think where both OHD and Thunder Tier 1 misstepped here was with their marketing and their kind of communication leading up to the launch. When it comes to games with mod tools, they are usually secondary to the experience. You have a fully fledged game with content and mod tools on top of that. Think Halo, Skyrim, GTA 5. Hell, you could even look at Gmod, which is a modding sandbox. They still came correct with a bunch of different modes right out of the box that you could play. They all have incredible games up front, and the mod tools are just cherries on top. So with your communication and with your marketing, you have to educate the people that, hey, this is a modding platform first, with a game kind of on the secondary, which is not what people expect going into 99% of titles. And the problem that most people have with Thunder Tier 1 is you can clearly see a good foundation, but there's not enough bait on the hook to bite. Most gamers expected post-launch support from Thunder Tier 1. And this happens a lot when you have multiplayer games like this. They want new missions, they want maps, modes, biomes, they want new gear, all of that stuff. And when it didn't come, people lashed out. All things considered, when you're creating mod tools for a game, you expect to have some sort of community there to want to play the mods. And Thunder Tier 1 did nothing to facilitate community with their game, and that's what inevitably killed them. I went back to play recently, which is why you guys are seeing gameplay here, and the game is fucking solid. I just wish there was more to do than the single player or the co-op story that you get. You have like 8 missions and that's it. And now after November 14th, the game is shutting down all of their dedicated multiplayer servers. So if you jump into the game, you have to go into a Discord or you have to find somebody who is hosting a server and enter it that way. And they basically said like, nobody's playing it. The game is dead. We're shutting down the servers instead of consistently paying for them on a monthly basis. And I can also understand that too. It just sucks from the community perspective because the game is dead because you didn't do enough to facilitate the community. And now you're just shutting it down and basically admitting defeat. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Realistically, at the end of the day, I don't think this shutdown of the multiplayer servers is going to affect that many people because they weren't playing anyway. For me, I'm disappointed to see a game that had this much promise and this much hope and this much hype around it from the community side to go the way that it did. But I also understand it. If you're a small team, you get picked up by a publisher, you want to create an experience that's front to back solid. They did do that. I just don't think they set community expectations properly, and that's what is inevitably leading to all of this anger and toxicity in that community. Do I condone it? Absolutely not. If you have a chance to pick up Thunder Tier 1, I don't know if it's ever going to go on a sale again. I wouldn't buy it at full price because they're shutting the servers down, so technically it's not the full game anymore. I really would like to see a sequel with more content, more everything, and more post-launch support because I think a game like this could really fill a void in this space. If you guys are looking for an alternative that is that isometric tactical shooter experience that has multiplayer, a new game just released on Steam called Operation Valor. It is essentially top-down squad with logi runs and base building, and it's a dope experience for the cost. I'm gonna have that game linked down below. Not sponsored. Some of the guys on that team are also working on Transients, so they're the homies, but the game is actually solid as fuck. Check it out. My name is Big Fry, and I'll see you on the next one.